being there at this office. Sorry, there's a plane going overhead. It's another sensory thing. Um, Hey, this is John from the Autistic Pro, and today I'm going to be coming at you with part 2 of my series on sensory overload stories. And so in part 1, I shared my experience at the Office Fantasy Football Draft with dealing with sensory overload, and that's in that sort of informal outside of work setting. Today I'm going to be taking a look at another kind of roughly work-related setting, the Office Christmas Party. And so to get notified of future updates, make sure that you hit that subscribe and notify button. And I'm also going to be putting this into a playlist. So I'll put a link to all of these videos in the description below. And so, let's get on with this. So for those of you who aren't aware, one of the big issues that people with ASD have to deal with is sensory issues. And as I'm saying this, I have a plane flying overhead, just kind of highlights what I'm talking about here. So often people on the spectrum will either experience hypersensitivity to certain sensory stimuli, or they'll exhibit a kind of a muting, a dullness, a hyposensitivity to sensory stimulus. And so when that sensory information just gets to be too much, we call that sensory overload. And so in this story, it happened at the Office Christmas Party. So just to give you a little bit of background about where I was at this time, because I think context really is important in understanding this, especially when you're talking about someone who's probably considered more on the mild end of the spectrum like I am. So to give you a little context, this was my first office party at this particular workplace. I had been working there for roughly 10 months. So I had established a lot of relationships within this workplace. I had started making some pretty good friendships within my own department, which is marketing, as well as the sales department, which is really closely, we work very closely with sales to coordinate with them. And I had also started branching out and making some friends outside of that marketing sales side. So especially with some other designers, which I had things in common with. They probably thought I was weird as heck, but I was, making friends with them, or trying to make friends with them at least, starting to warm up to them at least, in my mind. So coming into this Office Christmas Party was a little different than with the fantasy football draft, because I had felt a little more comfortable with the people at this time. Still, I'm always going to be a little socially anxious, I think, but that was probably less of a factor here than it was for the fantasy football draft. So anyways, this was a mandatory Christmas party. It was happening offsite at a nearby restaurant. And so this restaurant, or this office party, was originally planned to take place in the upstairs portion of this restaurant. It was kind of a more upscale restaurant, I guess you'd say. That prides itself on kind of, hip design and, I don't know, fancy foods. I'm not much of a fancy type of person myself, but to each their own. Anyhow, from the get-go, things went pretty wrong with this. So first off, we originally were supposed to have the entire second floor. That didn't happen. We ended up getting a portion of the second floor and there was supposed to be another party happening for the Jacksonville Jaguars simultaneously on an attached room, which, as it turned out, no one actually showed up to that side. So we were in this cramped space, probably, I'm going to guesstimate somewhere around 70 people in our office, all cramped into this little space with, some tables in the middle. There's a bar. There's a few booths along the back side. And really, it was an elbow to elbow crowd. So, I think anybody in that situation probably felt a little claustrophobic, especially I know in America, we kind of have a norm to have a little personal space. So I think for a neurotypical person, this probably wasn't ideal. And then the second thing that was kind of an unplanned thing that happened with this is that they decided that this was also a great time to do some sprucing up of the place. So they had, while we were doing this party, they also had people working on the side doing some painting in some of the attached hallways and things like that. So, things are taped off a little bit. There's fumes coming in. So this was a bad sign already. So anyways, I get in there and I'm just immediately feeling very uncomfortable. I don't like the social situations anyways. And then we have to be elbow to elbow, bumping into people, jostling around. And then with it being such a closed-in space, the conversations just kind of condense into this cloud. And so I'm just sitting there, trying to filter things out, but with my sensory issues, that's really the part that's difficult for me. I just cannot seem to filter out conversations like normal people do. And so, and a lot of times it'll almost be like kind of bits and pieces of conversation, just kind of floating around that I'm kind of jumping around to. In this case, it was like walking through this fog of noise. It's almost like the conversation was so thick that it was like a cloud just walking through, or a soup that you're walking through, and so this really had a strong impact on my ability to communicate. Even with the people I felt fairly comfortable with. So in my own awkward way, trying to carry on conversations with people in sales and marketing, and I'm really clinging to them like a security blanket, really. But I can't seem to get past like a sentence or two at a time, and then there are other people that I would have loved to interact with. Like my designer friends were all sitting at a booth near us, but for me, I just don't know really how to initiate and how to approach in that situation. So like me sitting there in my head trying to figure out, okay, what do I say? What do I do? How am I, like, do I just go sit down with these people and start talking? Like, how do I do this? And even having worked on it for years, it's still kind of a mystery to me. But so I'm kind of trying to think through this, and the noise is just building up. And then, there's the smells from the paint, there's smells from food, there's people, touching all over you, lots of people moving around. This was just building and building and building until, I just couldn't take it anymore. It was mandatory, but, I got to a point where I'm like, I just can't do this. I have to leave. And so, I left the party early, and later on, people um, were telling me, "Where were you? Were you even there?" And I told them I was here, but I just couldn't handle it. And so again, this is another situation where you want to network, you want to build connections with the people that you're working with, build rapport with them, which is an important part of team building in the office. But you're stunted in that way because of the situation. And so and to be honest, I really haven't figured a good way out around this, and so I'm really interested to see how this year's Christmas party goes. I've gone to other office Christmas parties where it was slightly better, usually more spacious areas or areas that are at least familiar to me seem to help. But you can't always have that in your control, um, and I have no regrets at all for the fact that I had to leave. It's just me doing me. So anyways, if you've had a similar experience with office Christmas parties, let me know down in the comments, or any office parties for that matter. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure that you share it and hit the like button down there. And I'll talk to you later. Bye.